Cool. G'day. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another interview, this time with the wonderful Anthony Collum, which a lot of people would know about. For those who don't know, Anthony is a young superstar in the health and fitness world. So he's had already many careers in a short span, but I'll get you to tell us a bit more about yourself in a sec, Anthony. But already a career as an elite athlete, as an elite sprinter. Then worked as a personal trainer into exercise physiologist, accredited exercise physiologist, and now recently starting a new position as a lecturer at university. I'm sorry if I haven't got that completely correct, because I think there's a bit to that role that I'm not fully aware of, but I'm going to love to hear it. And so what I thought we had a really great opportunity here to just speak to, a young, great mind coming into the health and fitness world. Obviously learning from everything from the past, but a guy who's going to be definitely a key part in shaping the future. So I think it's a really unique time to catch you at the time that you are, Anthony, and speak to you. But yeah, tell me, how did I go with the intro, mate? What did I miss?
Well, I think you definitely made it extremely flattering. So thank you for that, and thanks for having me. I think, I think you got most of the details there. I think for people listening, I started off as a high performance coach in track and field, and I kind of reached a weird junction in my life where my sports career was coming to an end for a variety of different reasons. And I happened to stumble across HealthFix in a really important time in my life. And then, I worked as a personal trainer and exercise physiologist for a fair few years. And yeah, I guess right now what I'm involved with is I'm a professional practice educator, so PPE for short. So not quite the protective equipment on a work site, but I guess my role right now is to produce high quality candidates of allied health professionals for the next generation. So my role is predominantly building the projects and the placements and the internships, designing the interventions, and then assessing the students when they start to lead that process as well. So at the moment, as an example, I've sort of created a partnership with the ACU Football Club. So that's a club of, a couple of hundred people up to 1,000. And then we run, I guess, strength and conditioning, field sessions, a holistic health intervention across the board throughout the week. So I'll design the skeleton of that program, and then I bring students on board to, I guess, deliver that. And then all the way through, they've got to be able to, I guess, continue on that care, and then use evidence and provide rationales. And I kind of just assess them all the way through. So it's been really interesting. It's very hands-on, but it's hands-on in a different way. I think at HealthFix, I always enjoyed the fact that I had a lot of autonomy and I could apply theory in my own way and interpret it my own way. But now I've got to interpret the way somebody else is interpreting it and deem whether that's right or wrong. So it's definitely a different sort of hands-on right now.
Yeah, particularly being in the people helping people game, I always found it really interesting where one-on-one, you can influence the other person or have an intervention that has an influence on that person, but influencing a person to influence a person, it's a whole new game. And on that football clinic, it's completely run by the students. Is that what you're saying? Completely run by the students, and you're trying to put out as well communicated and end-to-end system, or like, have you got some help there, Anthony?
Oh, look, I'd say in theory it's completely run by the students, but I think I think that's where we'd like to get to. But I think I have my fingerprints on a lot of the operations at the moment, and I'm coordinating with the club and with the high performance directors hired by the club. But in terms of the day-to-day operations and their performance and the delivery of the product, it is 99% them. I think I do have to jump in from time to time, but I guess where we'd like to get to in the next couple of weeks is my role or my presence is diminishing week in, week out. So I think we'll get there eventually.
So probably a couple of questions that come to mind straight away. Then one, I'd really love to hear about perhaps you as an elite athlete, and then you obviously time working as a PT and EP, how that's, what do you take out of those two careers to bring into what you're doing now? And then speaking more of the program, what what are some of the outcomes that you're really expecting to do in any of the programs that you're setting up? Because I imagine it's a big challenge getting students to try get results for you that, that's obviously what we try as clinicians and coaches to do. And it can be difficult for trained people, let alone students. So yeah, if you can speak to you as an athlete and you as a interventionist yourself, now bring it into programming, and what's the outcomes that you're expecting from these programs?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. And I think my formative years as an athlete definitely influenced how I discuss things with my clients as a practitioner. And I think we'll go all the way back to the past as an athlete. I think the mentors that I had in that space, there was probably two elements that I got out of it, irrespective of the prescription of exercise or the intervention or your goals. Was, I think first and foremost was just consistency. And I know it's something that HealthBix promotes with their frequency and their adherence to World Health Organization standards. But I had a mentor, John Quinn, who was involved with, the AFL Giants, and he coached, I think, the Sydney 2000 Olympic team. And he's got quite a few, very elite athletes now. And I was training with him for some time. And really, he said the only factor you can really ever control is consistency. And the best athletes or the best professionals in any career really are just very consistent. And I think I've been really strong on that through my days as an athlete, through to my career as a PT, through to my career as an EP, is I think if you're consistent with your prescription, if you're consistent with your mindset and your attitudes and the way you handle situations, and if you're consistent with your clients in the way that you handle situations, and they'll equally respect that and engage with you in a consistent way. So I think that's one. And I think the other one would be my coach, Ron Bendel, who coached me into the Australian team for some time. And that was just intent. I think there is a lot of under-prescribing of exercise as an intervention or as a therapy. Globally, in Australia as a healthcare system, I think the evidence shows how much it does help. But it's, if exercise is like medicine and there's a dose-response relationship, it's not prescribed enough. It's not prescribed intently enough or intensely enough. And I've always tried to make sure with my prescription, and then in turn mentoring people in the future, that the dose of exercise is effective. So I think that's the main thing, is that exercise always needs to be effective, and then it needs to be consistent. In regards to PT, I thought what was really interesting, I think my own beliefs were really challenged coming into that career. I think I came from a place where I wasn't really sure the value personal trainers held in an industry that's sort of oversaturated with different titles and positions. And,
yeah, sure.
I came in as an athlete where physios were a big voice of authority. And then as I started to master my craft and I became a good coach or a good PT, hopefully, I found the incredible value someone like that can hold in somebody's life. Because I think what PTs have more than anybody else, even more than your EPs and your physios and your chiros, is they develop extremely close relationships with people, and they are the people that can actually introduce those two concepts, which is consistency and intensity. And I think it's such a core aspect to life in general, and that's such a big part of implementing that. I think, I was really pleasantly surprised, and it was amazing the amount of success stories that I had as a PT. And, I think PTs have the scope to prescribe, what exercise physiologists have in terms of delivery and scope. And that could be a whole different conversation for another day. But
I imagine, yeah.
it's just a highly unregulated market. And I think, great PTs are amazing servants to health and the implementation of health interventions. But yeah, I think in terms of my practice as a PT to an EP, I don't think a whole lot changed. I think I just got the license to thrill, so to speak. I'd done all my formal assessments and all my formal learning and theoretical knowledge, but I think for years leading up to that, I had to handle complex cases or handle complex situations as a PT by title. And I think that well versed me or prepared me well for my life in the clinical space.
Yeah, mate, I hear a lot about that in the sense of, I think to your first point, I remember hearing an elite coach who was quite similar, particularly working at that top level where there's a level of genetics and there's a level of training that's already been had, and there's probably a level of habitual training that is ingrained in the athletes as well. But this elite coach said the same thing, but in a different way. It's how can you handle the boredom? It's like how you can actually put up with the boredom. And I think as you start talking about exercise as a prescription that is too often under prescribed, there's just other things that might be a bit more wow factor sooner, and that habit or wanting to do it on the terrible days or the days when you don't want to do it, but getting through with it, and that just being that cumulative effect long term it means a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think you've been in high performance sporting scenarios as well, and I think especially when you get up to that elite tier of performance, the prescription often becomes very basic because it's just getting that stimulus in and that's it. And I think students are often really surprised when they're exposed to that, where you give them a template or a program of a professional athlete and there's not much in there. They just do it well and they do it often. So yeah.
No, I do remember that. I do remember that personally, coming out of a PT space and whatnot and going into high performance and just like, oh, it doesn't even look like they're training hard. And it is because it is consistent, and it is hard. They're just elite athletes who aren't necessarily screwing up their faces as much. But yeah, I think even if someone was doing PT 3 times a week and they were going really hard, it's different if you're doing it every day, if not twice a day. So yeah, that consistency and that intention is really intention and intensity. I think you mentioned is great. So I think that gives us probably an idea on how you're setting up these students as well, which sounds awesome, nice and simple. Another question for you then would be, I mean, you've just got so much at your disposal, I imagine, and so many opportunities. But what areas of exercise and health interesting you the most? And perhaps if you've had time, I know you're just settling into your new role. But are you doing any reading, or is there a big area of focus that you're really enjoying some reading that you can share with us?
I'm only doing one formal piece of reading at the moment because I've got a little bit of downtime, not too much. And so, bear with me, everybody, because I will be chipping away at this slowly. But I think a personal interest of mine, that was, it really started with my career at HealthFix, with the people that were presenting to me and the cases that I was managing, is the junction between mental and physical health. And I think everybody knows that exercise helps, whether they can really verbalize that or not. But I think, your physiological adaptations often take some time to kick into gear. But, almost every client that I've worked with, their mood and their energy has improved, threefold in the first couple of weeks. And I think I was in a position at HealthFix where I was managing a fair few mental health pathologies. And where it interests me is I find, we brought up before intent and we brought up consistency. And I've often found mental health is probably the biggest barrier to both. And I'm a big believer in, if you're exercising consistently and with intent, you will typically get to where you need to go with whatever goals that you have, and you'll be in a physical position to achieve your goals. But with mental health pathologies, it's often, barriers, time, effort, finances, what have you. The byproduct of having a mental health pathology is people might or may participate in activities that lead them down that rabbit hole where engaging in exercise becomes harder, or their belief systems around exercise, or their belief systems around pain change, or their awareness or their association with their body and their health changes as well, whether it be depression, anxiety, substance abuse disorders, or a variety of other mental health pathologies. I find it really fascinating because I'm a big believer in that engagement and that rapport in guiding your prescription and your intervention. So at the moment, I've tried to do things a little bit more formally. So I don't know how I got in contact with her, but Kira Lee Gould, who I think works out at Richmond, she's part of the ESSA board with, I think it's called the ASK program, which is essentially like a formal learning outcome. It's on the ESSA website, where it, I guess, goes through the various pathologies of mental health that allied health practitioners see or treat, and then the treatment pathways and the current evidence around that. And I think what was reassuring for me, because I've started the dissociative identity disorder and bipolar module, I think what was reassuring from my end was, I think a lot of the recommendations they were making, I was doing instinctively. But it's good to have that black and white prescriptive knowledge on how to handle these situations now, but that's kind of what I'm getting through at the moment, is I'm trying to get through all the modules and create a really good bank and library of, hopefully, all EPs and all exercise scientists and PTs in that exercise space know how to handle these pretty complex cases. Because I think at a minimum, you go through a TAFE course or a uni course knowing the physiology and the physical characteristics of an intervention, but the mental health is a whole different ballpark, I find.
And I think so. I think you mentioned it before, Anthony, where exercise interventionists can be so influential on people's lives. I think you mentioned because I guess you are going to have a lot of touch points. So invariably, I think we are going to be dealing at some point with mental health, large or small, right? It's all spectrums, as they say. Did you say that program is that just for practitioners or clinicians, or is that sort of openly accessible for everyone? And is it of benefit for someone who might be having low-grade anxiety or troubles managing stress or having dips in their moods from time to time, or even levels of mania from time to time? Is that something that'd be good for them to have a read as well, or is this more for clinicians?
I think it's available to anyone. And okay. I think that they've split up the modules into the pathophysiology, the intervention, and the scope. And I think for anybody who's interested, even if you're not working in the health space, to go through the pathophysiology, because it's really easily communicated information. And I think it was really interesting. Like, I'll use an example. I think the bipolar presentation, they spoke about, I guess, the progression of the pathophysiology and the warning signs and the signs and symptoms as it progresses from A to B to C. Mm-hmm. And I think if all people know what to look for and they can see that, it could really help a lot of people in their lives. So I'd highly urge anybody, the health clientele, professionals in other space. I'm pretty sure everybody's got access to it. I don't think, it's for ESSA members only. I'd highly suggest enrolling in those initial courses, which is the pathophys.
Yeah, cool. And it was at the ASK, did you say?
Yeah, ASK, ASK.
Okay, and that's on the ESSA website.
Yeah, so I think it's mental health, applied skills and knowledge. I think that's what ASK stands for.
Beautiful. All right, sounds great. Thanks for that. Thanks for that tip. So tell me, I mean, you've very much gone from individual interactions into broader scope. So what are there some key areas of public health that really interest you? I mean, we're seeing so many health professionals come through, we're seeing increasing numbers in courses and increasing numbers of specialist practitioners. It's a growing space because there's a health issue out there, and we look at a lot of things in cohorts. Yep. So is there some key areas of public health that's really interesting to you?
Yeah, well, I'll go into this with absolutely no research leading into this or any background, but I think you'll agree with me on this one. But you're speaking about different courses on offer and public health and access in the future. And I think the future is clear in my view, the past 5 years watching it. And that is, well, first of all, we'll go down the educators pathway. I think educators, we're seeing people sell kettlebell courses and powerlifting courses and all this technical upskilling. But I think we're not addressing the core issue, and that is most people aren't exercising enough. Mm-hmm. They're not just doing enough in general. And so I found courses like the Wellness Coaching Australia, getting people motivated to do more. Or I think the term that you use is connecting to purpose. Like, I think we need to get people in general falling in love with exercise again and really understanding its benefits in a meaningful way, or a meaningful way for them. And the public health issue that I find concerning is whether it's adult populations. I tend to zoom in on young people. Like, I think we're in this really weird climate now with technology, whatever that could be, gaming, social media, the internet, that there's this divide between, I think in terms of physical development, we've got young people developing at a higher level in elite sport. We're getting people jumping higher, running faster, lifting bigger weights, reaching, a higher standard of physical prowess early. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we've got a high proportion of people that don't move at all, that don't leave their house, that don't get sunlight, that don't, and I think that's the real crisis of probably my generation as healthcare practitioners in the exercise space. Is I think the next generation of people, there'll be a large bulk of participants who've never exercised and they're adults, who don't understand the value of exercise, who have completely disconnected from their bodies, from a motor control perspective, from a physiology perspective. And I think it's concerning to me, because I think you speak to high school students now, and, you know, without sounding like an old man, but a lot of kids don't walk to school anymore. Like, a lot of kids don't do organized sport. A lot of kids don't want to do it, you know, and that's because technology is so good. Like, it's a different issue altogether. So I think that would be my concern in the public health space moving forward, is for all people to move more, but I think in particular young people, or that proportion of people who aren't doing anything.
And do you have any access to data in what you've been doing in the universities already around, is it different in urban centres versus regional centres, where there arguably maybe, definitely not the technologies I know in the regional centres, but where, you know, distances might be further and then you do have to walk a bit more, or there might not be so many activities to get involved in, so they are doing more organized sports, or they have bigger properties, so the kids are more doing incidental exercise? Or have you got any insights into that in regional versus urban?
Yeah, like I said, I've done no research, Lee.
All right, no,
We're solving the world's questions coming in one step at a time. But I think, you know, I think David Green, head of school where I'm at, he has a particular interest in, I think, young female adolescent participation in sport. So I think he'll be someone I could touch base with in the next couple of weeks to kind of see where we're at. But yeah, like I said, anecdotally, it's an issue that I've seen crop up, but I'd have to get back to you on the raw data at this stage.
Yeah, very nice. So I guess I'm conscious on time, so I'm going to give you a big one. So a big question, but I think it is a step forward from what we were just talking about. Knowing you're touching on the inactivity sort of leads to not only sedentary behaviour being an issue itself, even into adults, probably more in adults, and obesity doesn't seem to be going away. It seems to be sort of going up, or maybe we're getting a handle on it now that it's at half the population. And you mentioned probably the things that you'd like to focus on. So, like, where do you see research heading, or where would you like to see research head, and maybe practical applications that you'd see that would come into play on the back of that research? I know there is some rising in like epidemiological studies and trying to find. I know access is a big thing. Like, is there a park within 2 to 5 kilometers of your house? Is there a swimming center within, you know, really having access to sport, organized sport, and venues where you can participate simply? I know there's research going into those type of things, but yeah, where would you like to see research go if you could, and leading to practical solutions, helping people do things, engage? It is difficult to be an adult with kids and a job and a mortgage, and, you know, the way that world works these days. Like, it is difficult to find that time to exercise. Where do you start to see some of those solutions coming from?
Yeah, I think, I would have similar sentiments to yourself. I think access is the big part, but I think access, as you've probably seen with your own business, it's not face-to-face anymore. And I think the real access is online. It's, you know, we're meeting online now, and I haven't had to travel to see you. And I think most health interventions can be delivered online. And I think that's where true accessibility comes from. And I touched on the issues that technology was causing, you know, populations with engaging with exercise. But I think if we can flip that around and use technology to our benefits, I think that's the way moving forward. I don't necessarily think it's the best modality or the best way to deliver it, but I do think it is the way moving forward, you know, for better or for worse. And I think when I was studying my master's, there was some research to non-face-to-face delivery of health interventions and exercise interventions. But I think the next 10 years, that's probably where I would say a lot of research could be put into, you know, and that's combining I think with the adherence of a lot of interventions, it's looking at behavior change techniques and soft skills and those ideologies, but it hasn't really been explored in a major way in a non-face-to-face setting. So it's looking at the effectiveness of non-face-to-face exercise interventions, and then pairing that with non-face-to-face, non-exercise skills to increase that adherence. And we spoke about consistency and intensity and intent. I think it all blends together, but it's just having the same gold standard prescriptive values that we all have for face-to-face, because we've had access to that for so long and for decades, if not longer, of research to support that. I think that process is essentially just starting all over again for online modalities.
Yeah, I agree. I think something that I find, which I think online can do run from access from a cost perspective, but a lot of times in our game, particularly when it's an applied science, a lot of learning is actually done from doing. And I know that's where when you spoke to about consistency as well. So I think sometimes when we're trying to be educated straight up, whereas actually what you're saying, it might be the non-exercise type stuff of just knowing how to relate to someone and find out how you can even drive their intentions to where they want to be, or at least to figure it out. It sounds like it's a really cool idea.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, it's measuring those intangibles, because I think we've both been in situations where you can often gauge an intervention or its effectiveness by subtle non-verbal communication or slight things that happen in your appointment. It's now all therapists having that same intuition or guide looking through a screen, or yeah, I think there's going to be hopefully there'll be a lot of research in that space in the next few years.
Yeah, I guess get that what pattern recognition or those type of reads a little bit sooner. That'd be really cool if that can be formalized into some sort of research. That'd be good. But challenge the old 10,000 hours of mastery type of scenario. And I know you mentioned it before, but are you reading, or in your time, as I said, like you've done a lot of good things in a short space of time, but definitely in key areas of interest. Have you got any great books that you have read or that you're looking to read, and maybe speak to us about why that was significant for you, or maybe why you want to read it?
No reading at this stage. Like I said, I'm getting through my podcast, getting through my ask, but I think the main reading that I'm doing right now is reading through a lot of student reports right now. And a lot of papers. I'm on marking duty right now. We're on semester break, and I'm doing plenty of reading, but no reading for myself. And that's probably something I need to reflect on. Is I think, I'm in a position now where I can probably put a few more hours towards my own health and my own development in terms of mental health and reading. And yeah, anytime I have chats like this and people are going, what are you reading or what's next, I often go, oh, geez, I haven't really put much time aside for myself. So
yeah. Does NRL.com count for you though? Like that's it's getting a few hits, isn't it?
I've spent thousands of hours on reading that sort of stuff, but yeah, I won't count that as reading. So.
All right, mate. Well, look, thank you so much for making the time. I'm sure everyone will get a great insight into your brain and how you think about health and fitness. And if they take something out of it, I think it'd be great. But I'm sure people will. So, Anthony, thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. And all the best.
No, thank you. And I think for all the clients, I'm still an active member at HealthFix. Like, I'm not a practitioner anymore. So all the more reason to come over and have a chat. I'm there in the morning. Don't be a stranger. We can have these chats till the cows come home if you want. So yeah, it should be good.
Because you're such a talker. You love it. Yeah, beauty. All right, mate. Thanks again. Appreciate that.
No worries. Thank you.
See you, mate.